When I was about 12 years old, my creative problem solving team had just earned a spot at the state competition. And we decided we needed team t shirts. My teammate volunteered to create cartoons of each of us for the t shirt, and I was so excited. When he revealed the design, the cartoons of my teammates were dancing, some doing cartwheels, just, basically doing fun stuff. And me? Well, mine was drawn laying on my side, my head propped in my hand, just thinking, apparently. This is when I realized "Ooh, something about the way I've done this whole creativity thing is different. And after I got over my complete mortification, I mean, this was middle school after all, I started to notice that, yeah, there actually was a grain of truth to that drawing. I've never been the one to dive in head first or tear up the rule book. That just wasn't me. I actually liked the rules, and I wasn't sure what to make of that. For a long time, I thought creativity had to look a certain way, loud, bold, and wildly outside the box. And it made me wonder if my approach is quieter or more structured, does that mean that I'm not creative? Well, as I've pondered this over the years and learned more through my professional work with an educational nonprofit that helps people know and love the creative process, I've come to see that often creativity isn't about rejecting the box. Sometimes truly creative solutions need that very box in order to thrive. So today, let's rethink the box of creativity. Instead of believing it's just a limitation, let's think of it as our toolbox. I rebuilt my creative confidence by focusing on three tools inside the toolbox, and you can too. Now, I suspect that my struggle with my own creativity is not so unique. As we grow into adulthood, research shows that we become increasingly disconnected from our creativity. The data is really pretty surprising. A NASA study showed that 98% of 4 and 5-year-olds who took a creativity assessment scored at the creative genius level. It's amazing. But by adulthood, well, that number shrank to just 2%. And it's not just in the data, we see this in real life all the time. My friend works at a pottery studio, and every time they start a new project, someone inevitably says, "But I don't know what to do. I'm just not creative." And so the question is, why? Why are we seeing this drop in creativity, or at least in creative confidence? Now, as with any complex issue, there are, of course, a million answers, but three in particular stand out to me. First, we don't really have a shared understanding of creativity. It's one of those words we all use, but if you ask 5 different people what it means, you'll probably get 5 different answers. And so to Google we go. If you search for creativity definitions, you'll find over 100 different variations. Anything from the ability to create, which is not exactly helpful, to much more complicated explanations. It's confusing. And if we don't know what creativity actually is, well, how can we expect to feel confident in it? And if you want to improve your creativity, well, the advice isn't much better. It usually sounds something like this: take a break, read a book, set aside time for creativity, have confidence in your creativity. I mean, honestly, this list might leave you feeling more lost than when you got started. And finally, we have what I like to call the Eureka ideal. We celebrate these sparks of inspiration as the pinnacle of creativity. I mean, look no further than Isaac Newton. Like an apple just falls on the man's head, and all of a sudden he's like, ah, yes, universal gravitation, of course. It's a fun story, but it sets a ridiculous standard. If creativity is supposed to come in a sudden flash of genius, well, what happens when there is no flash? With all of these hurdles, you've got confusion, vague advice, and an impossibly high bar. It's no wonder that the innate creativity we had as kids starts to dwindle as we get older. But creativity shouldn't feel like a secret guarded by a chosen few. We have to shift the narrative, channel our inner Dorothys, and pull back the curtain. And you know how that story goes. The wizard isn't a wizard at all. Creativity isn't magic or divine inspiration. It can be taught, it can be learned, and it can grow. The key lies in the learning theory of desirable difficulty, the idea that the best long term results come from tasks that are both challenging and attainable. Now, when something feels impossible, what do? We give up, right? Yeah, we hit a wall, we get stuck, and we convince ourselves that we're just not creative. And so, how do we make creativity both challenging and attainable? Well, that's where the box comes in. It's a practical, structured approach to creativity that can help us build back our confidence. Creativity needs a box. Now, first, let's start with a simple definition of creativity. It's productive, it's new to some extent, and it's expressive. From here, we can shape the box, our toolbox. It contains everything you need to make sure your solution is, in fact, productive, new, and expressive. And inside that box, you'll find three essential tools for creativity. First, we have constraints. To solve a problem, you have to know what you can do and what you can't do. And while constraints often feel limiting, they're actually the opposite. Here's an example. There once was an author who took on a wild challenge from his editor to write a children's book that a first grader couldn't put down using only 50 distinct words. 50 words. Can you imagine? It's not a lot to work with. But instead of seeing this as an impossible challenge, this author embraced the constraint. And the result, have you guessed? Well, it was none other than Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss, one of the best selling children's books of all time. Now, it turns out this editor was onto something. Psychologist Katrinelle Hott Trump later coined the green eggs and ham hypothesis. And yes, that is its real name. It's the idea that constraints don't stifle creativity, they spark it. But constraints alone can still feel stifling unless you have our second creative tool, resources. A resource is anything that helps you solve the problem, whether it's knowledge, materials, relationships, or anything else you have available. Even Dr. Seuss used extensive notes, charts, and checklists to help keep him on track. The trick is recognizing your resources and using them to bridge the gap between constraints and your goal. Resources don't just help you complete a task, they guide you toward better and more thoughtful solutions. And that brings us to our final and most important tool in the box. It's you. You are the driving force of the creative process. Your unique strengths, skills, and passions allow you to create connections that no one else can. For Dr. Seuss, those strengths included a quirky sense of humor and a strong belief in the power of children's literature. Without his signature rhythms and playful rhymes, Green Eggs and Ham wouldn't be the book we know and love today. And that's the beauty of creativity. It's not just about what you have, it's about how you bring it to life. Without you, creativity is just a theory. But with you, well, it becomes a reality. Together, these three creative tools, constraints, resources, and strengths, fill your toolbox. And when we put them to work, the possibilities for creativity are endless. For me, this toolbox really does make creative tasks feel achievable rather than daunting. Think of it like a workout plan. Structure keeps you engaged and helps you make progress. And the best part is, you don't have to be Dr. Seuss or Isaac Newton to apply this toolbox to your own life in a million different ways. For example, maybe you're baking for a special occasion. Your constraints might be time, food preferences, and allergies. Your resources are your ingredients, your bakeware, and that cookbook that may or may not be collecting dust on your shelf. And your strengths? Well, if you like experimenting, you can adjust a favorite recipe. If decorating is more your thing, then don't worry about baking from scratch. You can use a box mix and focus on presentation instead. Every time you solve a problem, big or small, you're strengthening your creative muscles. And I promise you, if you keep practicing and focusing on your constraints, resources, and strengths, one day you'll be faced with a high stakes challenge. And instead of feeling stuck or untethered, you'll feel empowered. For me, like so many of us, that high stakes challenge happened during the pandemic. And I know it's not our favorite subject, but honestly, it made us all rethink the way we lived and worked. It was the ultimate constraint. For my team, the challenge was this: how do we take 20 plus years of in person educational experiences and transform them into something meaningful online? We had just a few short months before our biggest event of the year, and we were committed to providing an opportunity for positivity, creativity, and connection. And so we got to work. We examined our constraints, a tight timeline, a fully remote world, and a complete lack of experience in virtual event planning. We tapped into our resources: Zoom, Google Forms, and some scrappy but surprisingly effective spreadsheet magic. And most importantly, we leaned into our strengths, our collective passion for celebrating creativity. And in the end, and against all odds, we pulled it off, our very first fully virtual global finals tournament. Looking back, I realized that success wasn't about immediately stumbling onto a brilliant idea. It was about strategically building solutions piece by piece over time, using the tools in our creative box. Now, as we look toward the future, creativity is going to be more critical than ever. Our challenges are only getting bigger: climate change, technological shifts, and evolving workplaces, to name just a few. The same old ideas won't be enough. We need fresh solutions, and that means we need people who are confident in their creativity. And so we have to teach it widely, passionately, and relentlessly. Just like algebra builds on arithmetic, creative problem solving builds on a solid understanding of how creativity works. And if we're going to tackle these huge societal problems, we have to start by applying the toolbox to our everyday lives, whether it's cooking, relationships, parenting, or your job. It doesn't matter. The more you practice, the stronger your creative instincts become. So, here's my challenge for you: put this to the test. Pick a problem and really think about it. What are your constraints? What resources do you have? And how can your unique strengths shape a solution? Start small and experiment. See what works, and please don't be afraid to try again. Because when you practice creativity, you build confidence and you increase your ability to adapt, innovate, and create real change. The truth is, creativity doesn't have to look flashy, chaotic, or uninhibited to be meaningful. It doesn't always live outside the box. Sometimes it's in the questions we ask or the connections we make that others can't see. And for me, creativity lives in the structure, the focus. My creative confidence has grown inside the box. So now, when I think back to that cartoon on the t shirt I wore when I was 12, I'm so proud. I'm not the same little girl, unsure of herself, with her head in her hand, just thinking anymore. But that's where my journey to creative confidence started. And I'm so grateful to that little girl because she knew something that I hadn't yet realized. She wasn't just aimlessly lost in thought, she was building connections, exploring possibilities, using her creative toolbox before she even knew it existed. And that pose that I thought was so embarrassing at the time, no, it's amazing because that's my creativity, my confidence on full display. And I've learned that it's more than enough. Thank you.